Welcome, everyone, to our Swoon-Worthy podcast. Today, we are going to talk about a 2007 movie that was based off a 2001 book, Atonement. Now, this is such an amazing movie, and it stars Keira Knightley, our period drama queen, James McAvoy, and Saoirse Ronan in one of her first movie roles. This movie is so well scripted, has amazing music. It's a bit of a tearjerker. It makes you feel all the things, but it's worth a watch. And we're going to talk about that as well as the book that it's based on by Ian McEwan. So let's get started. Atonement brings back the same director, costume designer, music composer, and star of the 2005 movie version of Pride and Prejudice. We have Joe Wright directing, Jacqueline Durran as the costume designer, Dario Marianelli as the music composer, and of course, Keira Knightley. How do you think this movie compares to Pride and Prejudice?
Oh, that's a great question. It's definitely got the same beautiful cinematography and use of music and the fluidity, but it's so different, which is, a great thing. The director, I'm sure, doesn't want to make the same movie over and over again. And it was great to see Keira Knightley playing a darker character, a more cynical character. But it's definitely not like, you don't watch it when you're wanting the same thing. Like when you watch Pride and Prejudice, you want like a comfort, cozy movie that you love and that'll make you feel good. But then Atonement definitely is darker and just sadder.
I agree. That's a good point. Yeah. So, same quality of film, but it's not necessarily a comfort film. So you make a very good point. But I will say they are different cinematographers. So same director, of course. The music score, yeah, like you said, it's just very. It contributes to the atmosphere of the film. Got some piano in it. Now Dario Marianelli did not win the Oscar for the music in Pride and Prejudice, but took home the Oscar for the music in Atonement, and I think that was such the right choice that year. This music to me is like a star in itself. From the very beginning, you get this amazing music and the typewriter going on. And it just sets the tone for the film, which starts out with the character of Bryony Tallis. And she's a wannabe writer. So the typewriter element is really cool. Yeah.
She's a wannabe a lot of things in this movie.
We're gonna have to dig into her character analysis here because it's just crazy. But let's talk about the setting a little bit more, the costumes. So the setting of this book, we start out in 1935, a country home in England, and it's a beautiful house, beautiful gardens. It's just I was thinking about it the last time I was watching it. I would love to live there. It's so beautiful. And it's summer, but everything's in bloom. So you're still getting some spring vibes, but they're actually experiencing like a heat wave. And I think that contributes to the mood of all the characters, this heat that they're experiencing. I don't know. When you're hot outside and you're just kind of moody and irritated, you know what I'm talking
I mean, I live in Texas, so pretty much every
about?
day.
Fair enough. Okay. So think of being in England, you're not even used to the heat and you just get this heat wave coming in and tensions are high. Anyways.
Yeah, this movie has a lot of built up tension.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think they do that through the music a lot, like the typewriting, it builds tension and
Mm-hmm.
anticipation.
And I also like how the music kind of goes with Bryony's personality. So, and I was just revisiting the book. So, Bryony, it says she was one of those children possessed with the desire to have the world just so. She has an orderly spirit and a passion for secrets. So, this music is just so about her, I feel like, played by Saoirse Ronan.
I want to say Saoirse Ronan so many times in this podcast. Saoirse Ronan. Yeah, she reminds me of a female Rushmore.
Oh, I like that. Yes, Rushmore. I like the Wes Anderson reference. And Saoirse Ronan is just a phenomenal actress at such a young age. So the character is 13, and Saoirse, I believe she was 12 when she started this and turned 13 in the movie, which is crazy. And have to call to attention the fact that Saoirse got an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for this at just 13. And she's been nominated for Best Actress 3 times since then for Brooklyn, Lady Bird, and Little Women. And I saw an interview with Keira talking about how they were on set with her and just like this young woman, young girl who was just already almost, I don't know, surpassing them in acting. I don't know. Maybe that's a
Kind of reminds me of the Irish Dakota Fanning.
okay. Yeah. I like that. The Irish Dakota Fanning. That's a good one. And I think there's a scene too where she stands by the door, leaning against the door, and she sees James McAvoy's character, Robbie Turner, and they have a little exchange, and you can already tell she's kind of got a little crush on him. So then when this whole scene plays out and she observes the exchange at the fountain, she observes, her sister, Cecilia, played by Keira Knightley, and James McAvoy's character, Robbie, at the fountain. You got to wonder what's going through her head because she misinterprets everything. But you have to think maybe even subconsciously she wants to misinterpret it because of them being a potential love interest. I don't know. What are your thoughts about the whole fountain scene that she watches from her upstairs bedroom?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like maybe she has a little crush on him. And so when she sees him interacting with her sister, she's like, just and it puts her in a bad headspace, and then she saw what happened. I don't know what she was thinking, honestly. But what didn't she like notice the vase like at all? Like
No,
I would have been like, oh, they dropped the vase.
no. So I was rereading the book this part because I really wanted to get into it again and remember what. First off, the book to screen translation is so perfect. Like some movies, they go off and do this other thing, but this is such a true movie to the book, I would say. Now, it mentions even she doesn't notice the vase until a few seconds later. So when she sees Robbie pointing and like pointing at her and pointing at the ground, it, she thinks that he's commanding her to take her clothes off.
Yeah.
It's such a
Yeah, but
weird
like
thing.
who would do that? So
I
I mean
don't
that's how
know.
it makes sense because like when we're little, and I know you did this, you just like make up things that don't
You
make
make
any
up
they
things.
don't make any sense.
And she's a writer, so she creates these stories in her head for her writing. So the whole thing is she's interpreting wrong. She's creating this fantasy story in her head of him being, a villain, a sex maniac. It's just this really interesting thing that happens. And then we get the perspective of Keira Knightley and the real, the truth to it. So I love how they play with time. They go back in time and show us what really happened and why. The breaking of the vase. She's also in the book, it talks about Cecilia, the character. She doesn't know why she's irritated with Robbie. They've known each other since they were 7. They were childhood playmates. They go to college and they don't interact. Like there's just something awkward between them, right? And so, oh, and then in this one, Saoirse's character says, "Why don't you talk to Robbie anymore?" And she's like, "We move in different circles." So Keira's just feeling some tension with this character, and she's trying to prove to him, "Oh, you don't need to be the one to go get the vase. I'll get the vase broken apart." And so she takes off her clothes and jumps in quickly. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, I bet it's a really good book to read. I probably should read it sometime. But
You should. I also just I'm obsessed with reading like books that have a movie adaptation. I think you read books that are more original stories that aren't
yeah,
made
I'm
in
always like, they need to make a movie about this, and they never do. Like,
yeah. So anyways, so she witnesses this event, misinterprets, and then we have this other side story here. The 15-year-old cousin, Lola, played by Juno Temple, who many of you may recognize her from Ted Lasso nowadays, but this poor 15-year-old cousin, her parents are getting divorced. She has these twin brothers, but she's trying to act very mature. And then we get Benedict Cumberbatch's character, who is full on taking advantage of this 15-year-old and does some bad things. So I do love the acting of the fountain scene between Keira and James McAvoy. Like, I love when James McAvoy's like laughing at the whole thing. I don't know. Like, she's so mad. She's so mad that they broke this vase, this priceless vase, and he's just like, he can't stop laughing. I don't know. It's just cute. James McAvoy is so cute.
No, he is, especially in this movie. He's just a little person.
He's not a little person.
How tall is he? He's like 5 foot. Put him in your little pocket, your little back pocket.
He's 5'7". That's your height.
My height. I date him.
Yeah.
I wasn't married, which I am.
No, but James McAvoy, I was thinking about him. So Narnia, obviously. But even before that, Penelope, the movie with Christina Ricci, that's adorable and underrated. And then even before that, do you remember he has a small part in the Wimbledon movie with Kirsten
Oh
Dunst?
yeah, the
And
brother.
yeah.
Oh, and
Such a
he's also in that Split movie.
Okay, I've never seen that.
It's so good. No, it's M. Night Shyamalan.
I know, but it looks frightening.
No, it's
Okay, I'll watch it. And then Becoming Jane. I adore him in Becoming Jane.
mm-hmm.
So James McAvoy fan all the way. And I think this part was so perfect for him. The whole cast, honestly. Yeah. And Keira Knightley, you mentioned earlier how it's good to see her in this role. And I think it's a mature role for her. I think they originally wanted her to play the 18-year-old Bryony Tallis. But she was like, yeah, but she was like, no, I want to be Cecilia. And
Interesting.
I know. And she would look so good in this time period, this 1930s Art Deco. I love her first outfit that she wears. So it's the floral blouse with the geometric shaped on this print on the skirt.
The one
It's
that's
like a
the one that she takes off to get in the water.
mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that one's beautiful.
And it's such an interesting pattern and pairing, and it works. It's a light pink, almost a mauve purple. I don't know. I love it. I really do.
Beautiful.
And then we have the letter scene where he mistakenly sends the letter he was not planning on, which is pretty crazy.
Bryony reads it, of course.
That's the thing. And that's when I was revisiting the book and I saw the part about she has a passion for secrets. She likes to know everything that's going on. She's a bit of a spoiled younger sibling, the baby of the family. And she's just preoccupied with knowing everything. It said that she has a very extensive vocabulary, right? And she walks with a purpose. She's just very purposeful in all of her actions and movements. It's very interesting. I also like when he's composing the letter, he's writing the letter, the opera music that's playing in that scene. There's a song from the opera La Boheme, and it's just a beautiful song. And Keira Knightley's getting ready and she's putting on her makeup and her outfits. And that's actually feels like a music video or something. And then I looked it up because it was kind of in the back of my head. Joe Wright, the director, directed Keira Knightley in a Chanel commercial. I think 2 Chanel commercials, and it's kind of reminiscent of that.
No, yeah, I was gonna say that this movie, like sometimes when you're watching it, you're like, "Am I watching a Chanel ad?"
Yes,
But
but apparently they put Dior stockings over the lens to get a feel for it. So to get a really beautiful aesthetic. So we have Dior and Chanel
they put
influence.
Dior stockings over the camera,
Mm-hmm.
and you could still see. That's
To get
crazy.
a soft
Interesting.
effect. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and in the book, it talks about she puts on a black dress and she's like, I look like I'm going to a funeral. Then she puts on this light pink dress and she's like, this is not working. And then She chooses, even though it's kind of like just a at home dinner, to wear this beautiful, fancy, dark green, bright green dress. And it's almost like in the back of her head, she's like, I pretty much now know I love this guy and I'm kind of wanting him to see me looking good. So she puts on this dress. And in the book, it's described as figure hugging, dark green, bias cut, backless evening gown with a halter neck. Now, of course, she doesn't, it's not a halter. It has like the straps more, the thin straps, but it's very backless. It's very drapey. That's the bias cut technique. What do you think about it?
I'm looking at it right now. It's beautiful. It's very elegant.
It is.
It like kind of reminds me of a green version of the 10 How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days yellow dress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's iconic in that same way and
Mm-hmm.
kind of figure hugging, but silky and pretty and drapey. No other color would have worked for this dress. Like if it had been black or silver, I don't think it would have been as beautiful. I think this green is just the perfect color for it. Maybe red. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think another color would have worked with this dress?
I feel like red would work, but it's almost trying too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the green is perfect.
What shade of green would you call this shade of green?
Or green.
You think this is Anne Boleyn Hort Green? No. um, no, it's not. It's not. What is it? What is it? It's not emerald.
Yeah, it's emerald.
It's kind of a slightly lighter than what I think of emerald,
No,
but
I think it's emerald.
okay, fine. But no matter what shade of green it is, I think we can both agree it's a show-stopping dress. Entertainment Weekly interviewed the costume designer, Jacqueline Durran, in 2022, and she said that she bought a very lightweight white fabric and then dyed it green. So they did a lot of research on the color green and actually came up with it by layering three different greens together and then handed over that combination to the dyer to dye the white fabric green. So that's why it's such an intense color. That's why, we can't quite put our finger on it, that it's such a unique green, though I will admit, Kayla, you're right. It is very close to emerald. Yeah. And Jacqueline Durran, as we mentioned, designed for Pride and Prejudice 2005, eventually taking home the Oscar for her work with Joe Wright and Keira Knightley in 2012's Anna Karenina. She also won the costumes, the Best Costume Design Oscar in 2019 for Little Women, which starred Saoirse Ronan. And she was the designer for the Barbie movie. So she got an Oscar nomination for that and so many others. Cyrano, just a remarkable filmography. So she designs for movies across many time periods. But the green atonement dress is probably her most famous work. It's repeatedly voted the most popular movie dress of all time over any of Scarlett O'Hara's dresses, over the Breakfast at Tiffany's dress, that red Pretty Women dress. It beats them all. She wears like a silver star clip. She's got this Art Deco looking bracelet. That's sort of the time period of the 1930s, in style, Art Deco. And it's just very pretty. It's after the flapper era, right?
Mm-hmm.
But before World War II hit. So in World War II, they had to ration and they didn't have as much resources. So it's a period of opulence that's a little more, I think, sophisticated than the 1920s flapper look.
Yeah. It all went downhill after the 20s.
Well, no, but do you think this 30s look is pretty?
Yeah. It's funny. The 30s is like one that you don't really think about a lot about, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of anything really.
It's pre World War II, but it's after the Roaring 20s. It's like in the middle there.
Yeah, like the 40s, I think about Hollywood and World War II, and then the 20s, I think of flappers and prohibition. I guess that was actually more the 30s.
Prohibition in the US was from 1920 to 1933.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, the 30s, meh.
But it is still glamorous. If you look at this movie and think of that, it's quite glamorous. It's just sometimes overlooked.
Mhm. Oh, I think the Dust Bowl was in the 30s. I think of that. I think of our lovely grandmother.
Of course.
I think she witnessed the Dust Bowl. I remember she told me stories about it.
It's honestly frightening that that happened.
I know.
But this is England, so we'll
Okay,
go
back on track.
back overseas, back to England. Okay. So it all goes downhill after that, as you said. And I just think, okay, so we have to talk about the library scene a little bit, even though I don't want to talk about the specifics, but there's a library scene and it's romantic and beautiful. And but awkward, and they play on the awkwardness. I just think it's so crazy that Saoirse's character, Bryony, feels the need to just walk into the library, even though it's not where she should be. It's
Yeah.
clear the door was shut.
And then there was like multiple doors. It was just like, okay, you're going in there. Like,
And you hear something. So in the book, she's talking about she feels like she's supposed to be the protector. So she read Robbie's note. She thinks he's a sex maniac, and she thinks she needs to protect her older sister from him. But in the back of your head, you've got to think she has other reasons, like the whole crush thing,
yeah,
or
I do think she has a crush on him and she's just spiteful.
yeah, exactly. And she goes in the library, and then it's awkward.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk
But,
about the library scene.
but I feel like she wasn't really doing that good of being a big sister. Like she just walks past her. Like she doesn't pull her aside and try to explain anything to her. She just doesn't really communicate well with her little sister. And I feel like that would have probably helped a lot of her little sister being so, delusional and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like just talk to her, help her, guide her through life. Carly. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There was meaning behind this statement. No, but I'm with you. And I was actually thinking about this recently because we talked about obviously Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, where the sisters don't always communicate with each other and then bad things happen. So Wickham, Wickham's true character in Pride and Prejudice isn't shared by Lizzie. And then because she doesn't talk about this with her family and her sisters, Lydia gets in the mix with Wickham. And then same with Sense and Sensibility, Eleanor and Marianne, they're kind of keeping their emotions and their secrets to each other. And then, that's always not great. So yeah, I feel like the lesson in life, Kayla, is we need to talk to each other more as sisters. You're very right that she should have, when she knows that the letter was read by her younger sister, she should have talked about like, this was between me and this guy, and you had no right to read it, and he's not attacking me. He's not a sex maniac.
Yeah. And then after when she catches them in the library, she could have, instead of just walking past her, like just been like, okay, I need to talk to her for a minute. And then also if she felt more comfortable talking to her older sister during the whole seeing them out in the, the fountain area, she could have been like, hey sis, I just saw something weird. Like what happened out there? But she didn't feel like she could do that.
It's true. I think this book and the movie, especially when you first watch it, you're putting a lot of blame on this 13-year-old girl because horrible consequences come from her actions and her words. But then at the same time, you have to think she was a 13-year-old girl. Her mother obviously let her wander around aimlessly. Her sister is not guiding her. I mean, yeah, you have to think about that. I think it's worth talking about. And then they go to the dinner, and the twin boys run off, and they decide to go on a search party mission. And the pairing up of it's so horrible. So Cecilia, Keira Knightley's character, decides to go searching with the brother instead of with Robbie. So then those two are together. The little kids, the 15-year-old Lola, the 13-year-old Bryony, are just wandering around in the dark by themselves. And because of that, Lola gets attacked by Marshall, the friend. And it's like, why was this handled this way? It was horrible.
Yeah. That was That's the 30s for you.
Well, hopefully people will learn from this. I think there's a lack of parental guidance for the younger kids in this.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, and we're learning this more and more with like that Nickelodeon documentary that just came out. People don't realize that you have to protect children. Like they're defenseless in this world. And like, even if you just think they're safe or you've got other things on your mind, like that should become first. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have children, you need to protect them.
It's very true. Well said. So a lot of the blame goes on the 13-year-old girl, but I think really the blame should be on some of the older folks in this situation too. Because, but then of course, when you watch it the first time and you're still just like, oh, I can't believe she's sticking to this story that she saw him. She repeats it over and over again. I saw him. It was him. I saw him talking.
And he was like, just like you see me now. She's like, I
I
saw him.
know it.
I
Yeah, I
know it
know.
was him. And he's like, you know, that part is so annoying. It's like, dude, this little girl obviously is confused. Like,
That's in the book. Like that exchange with the policeman. Yeah.
oh wow.
You know him or you know it or you saw him. Yeah. And so it also describes in the book how it compares when if a woman is getting married, even if she's having second thoughts, the wedding is about to go on, everyone's dependent on your decision. Even if you're having second thoughts, you don't want to call it off because of how it'll affect everyone else, right? And it compares that to her. So even if she was having any doubts, she decided to stick with her story because she was getting encouragement and not wanting to let down her mom. And like, it's very interesting how they describe it.
Well, yeah,
So,
they were like, good job, Bryony.
mhm. Mhm.
Um, but it's just interesting. So, like, was there no trial? Like, they just,
Yeah, there's a mention of a trial and some testimony, and they interviewed everyone, but and then Keira Knightley's character Cecilia was trying to pin it on that young
oh,
servant boy, Danny Hardman.
yeah,
Um, and even up until, years later, she thought he was the culprit,
yeah,
right? Cecilia is saying, "Why aren't you interviewing and talking to Danny Hardman? It's got to be him." So yeah.
yeah. And then it's just infuriating how the guy who actually did it, he's just like casually passed out, sleeping in the living room. Like, he doesn't even care, like, not worried or stressed at all.
And that's where the whole privilege thing. So this guy is wealthy, a wealthy friend. Even though they knew Robbie from when he was a child, they didn't trust him, but he was not as well off. And then it almost made me think wonder how often this happened back in the day, where they would take the word of the upper class over the lower class. And I'm sure there was false accusations all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. And the scene with Robbie's mother, played by Brenda Blethyn, the one who was Mrs. Bennett as well. And she goes and she's smacking the police car with the umbrella, and she's just in such anguish. Like, that scene is so
It's so
emotional.
sad. Ugh.
And that's how part one ends of the book. It's so sad. So we've talked a lot in detail about the scenes from 1935, but then we get later on. So he goes to prison for about 3.5 years. And during that time, Cecilia can write letters to Robbie, but she can't even visit him. Only the mother can visit him. This is left kind of off camera, but it's in the book. And then he decides to go into the army instead of staying in prison, which is obvious, kind of an obvious choice. It doesn't work out. But the whole scenes set in France during World War II. What do you think about those scenes? They're
I mean, I kind of, yeah, the shift, I kind of wish they explained a bit more. Like, I guess, I mean, it's easier if you've read the book, but not reading the book, you're kind of like, okay, you don't really see him in prison or anything. All of a sudden, he's just in the army. So I guess, I kind of thought he did his time and then joined the army. I don't know. Like,
I agree. I think they could have put a little more into that, talking about him being in prison. Agreed. But the war happens, and I think the scenes set in France during the war are beautiful. They're very sad, but they're beautiful. You get the expansive poppy field scenes, the Dunkirk beach scene with all the soldiers, and such a beautifully made movie, but they're just so sad, those scenes.
Yeah, it's sad.
And the music plays a big factor in these scenes. So that whole scene where they're doing um, the Dunkirk, where they're waiting on the beach, all the soldiers, the song is called The Eulogy for Dunkirk, and it's a 5-minute single take tracking shot. So, sort of like if you remember in Pride and Prejudice, we were talking about the Netherfield ball scene being a single shot camera work. It's the same with this beach scene. So, a single take, the camera.
Well, yeah, and then that part where he's wandering around and it's like he's looking for water. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody give him water. Like
I
it's so
know.
sad. And then he's just kind of acting strange all of a sudden. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why is he acting strange? And then that guy just has him like lay down. I'm like, dude, give him some water. And
I
then
know.
it cuts to Bryony and she's a nurse now.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So then 18-year-old Bryony, played by Romola Garai. Did you recognize her? Emma Woodhouse from the miniseries.
Oh wow. I mean, she looked a lot like a grown-up version of Bryony.
Mm-hmm. I think the casting was perfect. And then Vanessa Redgrave plays the older Bryony at the end. And the three of them, apparently, Saoirse Ronan, Romola Garai, and Vanessa Redgrave, they did some improvisation and they tried to get each other's mannerisms the same and their way of talking. And I think that comes through. It's really well done.
Yeah, well, I think so too.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about her as a grown up? She's starting to really grasp what she had done and how it was wrong, how she misinterpreted things. I feel like she's definitely feeling sorry, and it's not fake. Like she's definitely upset with herself.
Yeah, I mean, she's realizing the impact of her actions, and it's sad. I mean, when you start to see them, she goes to see her sister and everything. Like I hadn't seen the movie in a while, so I was like, oh, I don't remember this part, and oh, I'm glad she's getting to apologize to them, and he was so mad and hurt, and it was sad.
And yeah, so she kind of becomes a nurse to sort of pay for her sins, I think, in her head, right?
Atonement.
Atonement. There you go. And she's very becomes more human in this whole sequence. Like before, when she was younger, she was very in control, almost like a little robot. She liked to write stories, but all of her emotions were not real. They were fantasized in her head, and she's lost in her thoughts. And then here she's very human. Sounds like she has a couple friends. She wants to give the soldiers her first name instead of her last name. Like she's very human in this scene. And then that whole realization moment when she's going to the wedding of Lola and the Marshall character, and it's like light bulb, it was him. That's, I mean, I hate this whole aspect of the story. It's disgusting, but I think the movie is well made in that you're kind of, if you had seen just the movie and not read the book and everything, like you're just like, oh my gosh, that's it. Because when they show the incident, the crime in the 1935 scene, I can't remember. Do you get when you first watch it, do you see who it is or you can't? What is
I
that?
I think I could tell it was him
Yeah.
because it kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of it's kind of like her, just like her. You kind of see him, but then you're like, well, maybe I just saw someone else or something.
Mm-hmm. And there are hints too, because back in the 1935 scene, the poor Lola girl, she says that she was attacked by her brothers and she has marks on her hand, on her arm. But I think he had already attacked her once.
Yeah, I definitely think, and she was just pretending it was her siblings playing, and
Mm-hmm.
so
She
gross.
didn't feel like she could tell the truth, and it's very sad that that happened. And where were the other adults? Where was the brother who brought this friend? People trusted people back then, even more so than now. I mean, it's still going on, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. People just, you have to really protect children fiercely. You can't take your eyes off them, even in a giant house, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. And this guy got away with it, and then they ended up getting married, which is, you know, probably something that happened. The girl didn't think she could be with anyone else, maybe, and it's very sad. They
Yeah.
don't really dig into that part of the story. You don't really know what that character felt in her journey as much,
Yeah.
but very, very sad. And then, yeah, so we're seeing Bryony as an 18-year-old. She, as you said, she goes and visits her sister and Robbie, but then we cut to the older Bryony telling her story. She's about to, retire from writing because she actually has an oncoming dementia from her doctors, are telling her this. And she wanted to finally finish her book that she started a long time ago. It was her first book and her last book, called Atonement. And that's when you learn the truth. And that part is so sad. So that whole exchange
Yeah.
in June of 1940 never happened. She never got to go apologize to her sister, and Robbie died back in Dunkirk. So
I know.
Ray
And then
Dunes
and her sister died.
in
And
the tunnel. Mm-hmm.
oh, it's so sad.
It's
And
so sad.
they just wanted to be together, and they never got to be together.
So her atonement is writing a happy ending for them in the book. It's so sad.
So
And then
they finally get to be together in her book, at least.
I know, at the cottage on the beach, and that final scene is so. Are we getting emotional, Kayla?
I'm getting
I
emotional.
know it's a very emotional book. I think it's a movie and book. It's hard for people to. Some people, I think, they come out of the movie and they don't like it because it makes them feel things and it's sad.
Yeah, when I first watched it when I was little, I didn't like it. Like, I just thought it was kind of a bummer.
Well,
But
yeah,
I watched it again last night for the first time in a long time, and I was just like, just it just resonated with me on a different level because I've lived life more, and it's just you can relate in different ways more, It's just sad.
it's very sad. And that scene at the end where they're playing in the waves and getting to be in their cottage, it's so beautiful. And that's probably you know, how it was back then in World War II. I mean, life was so uncertain, and people were parted by the war, and they didn't get to have their happy ending. It's very sad.
It's sad.
But it's a beautifully made movie. A lot of learning, you get a lot from it. And I think it's worth a watch if you haven't seen it. Hopefully, you haven't bummed people out too much. But
This podcast is more for people who just want to swoon over things they've already seen 100 times, and they just want to talk about it even more.
because I would say it is a swoon-worthy movie because of the music, for one, the sweeping shots of the war that really did happen, and of course the costuming and the love story that really is built into it. Now, I did want to ask you this question because there's that famous saying, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. And I feel like that's very fitting here because if you think about it, I don't, it's almost like Bryony spent all her life trying to atone for her actions. And it almost leaves it to the reader and the viewer that she didn't ever have a love like her sister did, as brief as it was. So what do you think about that saying?
Yeah, definitely. It's sad that she didn't. She should have, you know, been able to just forgive herself and move on and just be like, like that's that's terrible what I did, but I'm not going to let it define me, and I'm going to change, and live my own life, because my sister didn't get to live her full life, so at least I can do that. But unfortunately, she chose the darker path. But I mean, I think it's nice she wrote the book for her for sure. But I would like to think, hopefully, she did have some type of life of her own.
Yeah, I think it mentions that this is her 21st novel or something. So she was a successful writer, but you have to wonder if she didn't allow herself,
I mean,
certain happiness because of she felt bad.
that's just something you never forget, unfortunately, because it's such a, even though you were a kid when you did it, it's still such a, you ruined two people's lives, basically.
Yeah.
But again, I think that it could have been avoided if people treated the child a little bit differently and
Mm-hmm.
communicated better.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
it's
with you.
it's a very interesting tale.
It's very complex and it makes you think. And at the same time, it's beautifully directed, beautifully shot. Um, I love even just the scenes of Keira Knightley running with the flower bouquet in the in her home in 1935. There's even the scene where Bryony jumps into the water for Robbie to save her. You remember that scene? That's like a
My
memory.
gosh, that
We
part's
didn't
so infuriating for me. It's like,
even.
girl, read the room.
But it's beautifully shot. They're underwater struggle, like all the scenes, even if they are traumatic or whatnot. It's such a well-made movie. It's so beautifully made, I think.
Oh no, it definitely is.
And it only won one Oscar, which was for the music, and it deserved that. But I almost think it deserved some more Oscars.
Yeah, they like to pick the darker, more intense movies, I feel like.
Let me see what movie won. Oh, that was a big year.
What one?
That was the year of No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, La Vie en Rose. Marion Cotillard won the Best Actress award, and she was so good in that. Costumes, Elizabeth the Golden Age. This was a big year for
What
Oscars.
one? Best Picture.
It was, I think, No Country for Old Men. Yeah, the Coen Brothers. That was such a crazy year. Juno won the Best Original Screenplay.
Oh well.
Remember that movie? Sweeney Todd was that year Best Production Design. And then Falling Slowly from Once won the Best Original Song, and that song is so beautiful. That year was insane for movies. Oh, Ratatouille, Best Animated Feature.
Man, a lot of good stuff that year.
So Atonement, I feel like if it had been any other year, it might have won more. And we talked about the opera song from La Boheme. We talked about the beautiful score by Dario Marianelli. They also have the Claire de Lune song in here by Debussy. I mean, that's a powerful song. So one more question, Kayla. What other books or movies would you recommend for people who like Atonement? Do you have anything you want to throw out there?
Well, one book that I have read that's kind of like a dark love story. It's not really a period film or anything. It's called Verity by Colleen Hoover. It's the only book I read of hers, but it's really good.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out.
Okay.
And I was thinking it reminds me a bit of Cold Mountain
Oh yeah. Oh
because it
yeah, the love that never got to be.
torn apart by war, and like they kind of are basing their love based on just a few memories of being together. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good book too.
That's a good one. We need to do one on that.
Mm-hmm. I love that cast. All right. Thank you all for tuning in to our Atonement podcast, where we talked about the Joe Wright film starring Keira Knightley, James McAvoy, Saoirse Ronan, and others, and a bit about the book and the context from that. We appreciate all of your support in our first season. We have one more episode in season one coming your way. This was our 11th and penultimate episode. But thank you all. Please subscribe to us on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please join our Patreon, where you can get videos of us talking and some fun graphics and polls. I'd also like to ask you all to comment on our posts on Instagram. Let us know what you think. We love getting feedback and hearing your take on everything. What period dramas do you want to hear more about in the future? And for our final episode of the season, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be together in the room. I'm traveling back to Texas to be with my sister. We're going to share the podcast, microphone, and video. And we have a very fun topic prepared for you. So please check in a week and you'll hear what we're talking about.
Wait, give them a hint of like what the movie is going to be.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. And a hint for which movie we're going to cover. Think of another iconic green movie dress.
And we'd also love if you left us a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Catch you next time.